Hi there, welcome to Hi there, welcome to the Indie Birth Alliance Summer 2020 Education Series. The Indie Birth Alliance is a group of professionals empowering a healthy birth community through support, service, education, and advocacy. We have been hosting an education series throughout this summer as of August, and it's running through the first week in October every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is our Summer 2020 series. We have had a variety of guest speakers and will continue to have a variety of guest speakers. And so we invite you to join us each week as we dive into birth and infant-related topics such as breastfeeding support, doula services, fertility coaching, pelvic floor therapy, postpartum care, spinning babies, VBAC, the infant developmental sequence, and more. Tonight, the title of tonight's presentation is called What is a Doula Anyway? And our topic is Doula Support Services. And we have the privilege of having Carly Melentine join us tonight. Carly is a wife and mom of 5 boys. She is a certified DONA birth doula, a certified lactation counselor, and certified hypnodoula. She is the founder and owner of Willow Doula Services. Carly is passionate about her faith, her family, being a lifelong learner, and all things birth. If Carly could go to school forever, she would. And not only is she a lifelong learner, but she is an awesome teacher. And every time I spend time with her, I feel like I learn so much. So I'm excited to hear from her today. So Carly, welcome. It is just an honor to have you join us tonight. Why don't you start with telling us about what is your passion and what inspired you to become a doula?
All right, thanks, Jocelyn. So the reason I decided to become a doula, it's kind of a lifelong passion of mine. As a little girl, I loved all things birth. I always wanted to ask about pregnancy. I wanted to know about breastfeeding. When we played house, I delivered the babies. Just all sorts of kind of curiosity about all of that. So as I got older, I read everything I could get my hands on, pre-internet, of course. So I was learning as much as I could. I supported my first birth in August of 1999. And I was just amazed. I was hooked. That was it for me. I just loved it. And so I dreamed of becoming a labor and delivery nurse. And I ended up kind of changing my plans while I was in college. And I finished with a marketing degree and a baby of my own. So had a few more boys after that. And so it kind of put, my doula plans, or well, I didn't know what a doula was at the time, but it put my birth worker plans on hold. But I went through the pregnancies, some infertility, a loss, and more pregnancies. And I just learned a lot more about how women's bodies work, kind of what kind of things, I guess things, I found out what I didn't know. And I just loved, the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. And so I just started really looking into that and talking with friends and talking with my midwives and just learning as much as I could. And then a few years ago, a friend casually just asked me one day, if you could do anything you wanted in the world and money and time wasn't an issue, what would you do? And it didn't take me very long, maybe a couple minutes, if that, to just say, I want to do something in the birth world. And she said, okay, well, then why aren't you doing it? How do you get there? And I was like, well, gosh, I don't know. And so I immediately went home that day, and that started my journey on becoming a certified doula. And so I was trying to figure out, what can I do with the skills that I have, the education that I have, and how can I utilize that? And so I became certified. And every year I've added a different certification. This year I'm adding another one. So just kind of every year learning more and loving serving my clients.
That's awesome, Carly. So you're a doula. For those who are new to the doula world, what exactly is a doula anyway?
So a doula is a professionally trained support provider. We offer guidance, information, education, physical and emotional support to the mom and to the partner during pregnancy, childbirth, and even sometimes postpartum. A doula is kind of an encourager, an advisor. Basically, we help moms they tell us kind of what they want, and we help them find the information to make that happen. It's kind of like Google Maps of childbirth. We know the road, we know how to get there, and so we navigate while you drive. And so we just kind of really help you. Some of the things the doula will do when you're meeting with them is we go over birth planning. We try to figure out kind of what you want, and we help you to kind of write that down on paper. They're more like intentions, but we like to go through exactly what you're looking for so we can help support you in that, and then share it with your birth team. And then during labor, we remind you of those things so that when it comes time to make decisions, we kind of have those things on our minds. We talk through options of pregnancy and birth. We give moms resources to kind of, if they're not sure about something or if they haven't heard of something, a lot of times I'll say, well, what about this? And a mom will say, I don't know, is that a thing? And so then I give them the education resources that they need, and they can kind of make the decisions for themselves. We teach exercises, spinning babies. I know that was one of the discussions we had a few weeks ago. So a lot of doulas that have done that training will teach their moms that. It's a really great thing to learn. We talk and teach about breastfeeding. Not all doulas have breastfeeding certifications, but some do. I'm certified lactation counselor, so I do work with a lot of my clients with breastfeeding even after babies are born, because sometimes there's some questions there. And then we let you know what to expect during labor, what's normal for moms and for partners. It's scary for partners too sometimes, because they maybe haven't done it before, or they have done it before and they know what they're in for, and they want that help. And so we show the partners comfort measures that they can implement during labor. We walk through the physiology of birth. We explain exactly what happens physically, emotionally, so that the partners can understand, but the moms also can understand. Because again, women come to us in all states of education, right? Some people know a lot about their bodies, other people don't. And so, we just work with moms and help them to understand what's going to happen so that they can feel comfortable and they can feel informed and empowered about what's going to be happening. So yeah, talking all the way from the beginning until the end, we kind of walk them through that. And each doula is different. Everybody has a different approach. Some people, like I said, have different certifications. They teach different things. And so there's kind of a doula for everybody out there.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Carly. So we now know what a doula is. We know that you are passionate about being a doula, and I love how you have incorporated your own personal journey and all that you've learned, and you bring that experience to your client to help your client feel more comfortable and help them make options, create options, and then you remind them of that plan, but you're also pretty flexible about it. So that's super. With that said, in addition to that, how can a doula improve expecting mom's birth experience? Like, why a doula? Why not just have, a friend there with you at that moment? Why specifically a doula?
Sure, that's a good question that a lot of people ask. So having a friend is great, and having a mom with you is great. However, it's very different because there's an emotional attachment that can sometimes cloud somebody's judgment, some of your decision making. Having a doula there, you have somebody who is definitely educated in all things birth, and you'll have them be able to kind of pay attention without the emotional bias of what doctors are saying, what your midwife might be saying, what the nurses are saying, and be able to kind of give you that information if you're not paying attention or if you don't really know what's going on, to kind of lay it out for you so that you can make a decision that fits you. A doulas definitely help you get the information you need to make the choices that you want. And so we make sure that you remember what you told us. You remember in that moment when you're, you know, kind of not thinking that we're giving you back what you told us you wanted. And that doesn't mean that it can't change, because it can, and it does all the time. But just making sure that people are making their own choices. Doulas help educate you and empower you so you feel confident in your choices. And that's not something that, again, moms are wonderful, but the education aspect is missing. And if you really do have a good connection with your doula, that relational aspect is there. I thought it might be weird when I first started going into such an intimate situation, but there's just this connection, and I can take care of them like they were my children. I mean, I just am able to love on the moms and take care of them and kind of see their needs and support them. And sometimes there are moms and sisters in the room too with me and, you know, dad and whoever else. And that's awesome. That just gives a mom an even better support system. So that can be great. But doulas can give you the reassurance when things are scary and you're unsure of what's happening. They pay attention to the surroundings, like I said, and keep you up to date on what's coming up the pike, what might be happening next, to kind of prepare you. And that's just something that a mom or a sister, unless they are a certified doula, of course, just can't do. And so it's not an and or, it can be a both and. So families who seek a doula, if you want statistics, some people do. Evidence for Doulas by Rebecca Decker, she states that families who have doula care have a 34% decrease in the risk of being dissatisfied with their births, a 31% decrease in the use of Pitocin, which I know many moms not a fan of. They don't want to do that if they don't have to. 28% decrease in the risk of cesarean sections, which is a big deal. And a 14% decrease in the risk of a newborn ending up into a special care nursery. So those are pretty good statistics. And there's been many, many studies on having a doula. So those are some great statistics.
Those are great statistics. I didn't know that. And wow, that's wonderful that you can have a 28% decrease in the risk of a C-section, 31% decrease in the use of Pitocin. I know for myself, I experienced Pitocin for 2 births, and whoa, was that a powerful drug. And I wish I would have known a little bit more about it and the effects of it, and the effects of it on my baby, and then the effects of it me afterwards. And so having a doula at my side to give me that information, I would have loved that. So with that said, will my doula be my advocate during birth? Like, is that a role that a doula would play as well?
So not technically, no. So a doula does provide you with information and help empower you, but our role is not to speak for you in the birthing room. Your decisions are your own. Now, my job would be to educate you, give you the information that you need to make your best decision. I remind you of the choices that you've made about your care. I support those choices. Even if you change your mind in the middle of things, that's okay. I help you ask questions. It's something that I go over in a prenatal interview even, is how to ask good questions, not only for mom, but for the partner as well, so that they both understand how to ask a good question. to get the answers that they need. Of course, I'm still there if they have other questions, but just helping them ask those questions for themselves. We work during prenatal visit to, definitely give you as much information as possible. But again, we're there to remind you. A lot of times I have dads go to birth classes and they're like, I don't remember a tenth of what I learned. And I was like, it's okay. It'll come back. We'll remind you, as things go. And that's the same thing for asking questions, advocating for yourself. It's super important to do that. And so I just ask questions to them to remind them, like, do you remember saying that you wanted to do this? And then they're like, oh yeah. And they'll, be able to ask their question. But definitely it's important for the parents to be making decisions and not the doula.
So when along the journey, should an expecting mom contact a doula? And what does that process look like? Is I was expecting, which I'm not. Done with that season, although I loved it and it was wonderful. We have 5 kids, and so I'm looking forward to different seasons in my life. But if I were, when should I contact you? What does that process look like? What is the best way to find a doula? How do I know this is the right doula for me?
So that's a really good question, and one that a lot of people don't know the answers to. So basically, you can contact a doula at any point in your pregnancy. Some doulas, it really depends on the doula's schedule. So you might call me, 2 weeks before your baby's due, and I don't have space. Or you might call somebody else and they do. Ideally, and I tell this to my repeat clients, and they do this, they call me as soon as the stick turns blue, because they want to make sure, to get on the schedule. But ideally, people call usually at about, 15, 18 weeks, in that range. That's the ideal, time when, you're kind of starting to think about birth and all of that. I don't meet with my clients until in their, between 32 and 38 weeks. So, it's not a super rush. The problem is that some doulas book up very quickly. And so you might have time, but they may already be booked. And so getting to them sooner than later would behoove you. It doesn't mean you can't find a doula, but you might not find the exact doula you want, might be busy. So it's just kind of helpful to start earlier. But it really doesn't matter. I've had people contact me I've been called the night somebody was going to be induced. They decided they wanted a doula with them. And I've been called when the stick turns blue. So anywhere in between. And as far as how to find a doula, a lot of people, you can go to like DONA, is what I'm certified with. It's the oldest certification in the country. And so you can go there and search for a doula by your zip code. You can go to a website called Doula Match, and you can put in your zip code as well, and it'll pull up all the doulas within so many miles of you. You can choose. And it's good to go to their websites and kind of look and see, what doula might be good for you. Look at they have reviews on Doula Match as well. You can see if your doula certified, you can see their pricing. And then if somebody sounds interesting, you go to their website, you check it out, and then from there, for me, I know it's different for every doula, but what I do is people email me either through Doula Match, or they'll go to my website and I have a contact form. And then when they send me an email, I usually get right back with them and we set up a free consult. And we meet at a coffee shop and we just kind of get to know each other. They tell me a little bit about what they're looking for. I tell them a little bit about what I do. They ask questions, I ask questions, and then you just kind of know. I joke with people and they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. But it's kind of like dating. There can be, 10 great guys or girls, I guess, if you're a guy, but, and it doesn't mean that all of them are for you. You meet somebody and sometimes you just know, like, yeah, I like this person, or this person meshes with what I'm looking for. And it's a lot like dating. You just have a chemistry and then you just kind of know. if you're uncomfortable with the doula, or they say something that makes you uncomfortable, or, you know, you feel like you have some more questions for them, definitely ask. But there's always a different doula. You know, there's a doula for everybody. There's all sorts of range of people, and there's all sorts of range of doulas. And so it's just important to be sure that your chemistry is right and that you trust that person, because you want them to fit the choices that match your birth. And sometimes you meet a couple doulas and it doesn't work, and that's okay. And they understand that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's good
That
to
makes
interview.
a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So
it's good to interview a few, unless the first time you meet somebody, you just are like, yes, this is the one. But
okay. Okay. Wow, that's awesome. That's really good to know. So will a doula take the place? So I found my doula on doulamatch.com, and
it's
I picked excuse me?
It's .net, sorry.
.net. So doulamatch.net, I find Carly of Willow Tree Services, and I meet with you, and I'm a little bit concerned because we're in the midst of COVID-19 and flu season is coming. So do I meet with you in person? Do I meet with you online? What if they don't let you into the hospital? What do we do?
Those are really good questions. You have a lot of good questions tonight. So the first thing is I will meet virtually, and I have, especially through the spring when it wasn't allowed to meet in person. I met everybody virtually. I did all of my trainings virtually, all my meetings, all of those things virtually. Once things kind of lifted in June and July, I would meet people maybe outside at Starbucks or Panera. But if people are not comfortable meeting in person, I have done phone calls, Zoom calls, you know, whatever works, whatever makes people comfortable. And as far as the hospitals go, as of right now, all of the major hospitals in Indy are allowing doulas in. They consider them essential workers. That was not the case in the beginning. One hospital was not allowing doulas, and so some doulas were doing virtual care, meaning they were FaceTiming. My clients actually chose to leave that hospital and birth at a different hospital so that they could have their doula with them. And it was early enough in their pregnancies that they were able to do that. But as of right now, all of the hospitals are kind of on board. And so that hasn't really been an issue yet. But I know in some states, it still is an issue. There are a lot of states that aren't letting doulas. So if you're not in Indiana, there are a lot of states that aren't letting doulas in the hospital still. And if that's the case, then it really comes down to virtual care, which I've done. And it's not as good as in-person care, of course, but it's better than not having anything at all. So.
Absolutely. So, okay. So I find my doula. I love Carly. We meet. We decide we feel safe. We're going to get some coffee at a park. And then it's time to give birth. And we're at the hospital. You get to come in because you're an essential worker. I love that. That makes me feel really good to know that you're there for me. My spouse is with me. Is that a conflict? Like, will you take the place of my spouse, or will you guys work as a team? Who do I listen to? How does this all work out? Is it, you know, am I going to go, what does that look like?
So absolutely not. We do not take the place of a partner. An experienced doula kind of knows how to fade in and out. It's really important to have the partners even at the consult so that they can kind of get to know too, right? They're, you know, it's also part of their choice. And you can feel the connection, you know, they're definitely needing to be at our prenatal meetings. And at that point, we really figure out how to work together. And dads, usually if they are uncomfortable, every once in a while, I'll have a couple dads that are uncomfortable with it, but they want to, you know, their wife wants it. And so they're willing to do it, but they're a little skeptical. At that point, you know, we really just learn how to work together. And they really understand at that point, I'm there for them too. I always tell them, you have your mom in the middle. She's, she needs to be focusing on herself and her labor and her baby. Your job is to take care of her. And my job is to kind of be around the both of you and be watching out for what's going on. So I make sure dad's eating also. I make sure dad's sleeping when he can sleep. If it's a long labor and there's some time, I'll usually, make a bed for dad and tell him to go lay down if he wants to. He doesn't have to, but if he would like some rest, I usually give them windows of when is it time to eat. Like maybe, you have a little bit of time, things are slow. This might be a good time to eat. It might be the last time you eat. But I also give them space. If they want to be alone, I'll go grab something to eat myself. Or I've even told clients during COVID, I'll go sit in the bathroom so you guys can kind of have your alone time, whatever, whatever that looks like. But definitely I want the partner to be supporting the mom. And so helping them learn comfort measures, helping them understand what's going on, and, supporting them as well. If they have a question, I've had dads look over me and mouth, is this normal? And I'm like, yes, and I try during the prenatal meetings to lay out kind of the obvious things that freak dads out. But sometimes, things will come up, or things that maybe freak one person out, don't freak another person out, but they'll ask questions, or I'll remind them, this is normal. You're going to see some blood, totally normal. And then you have dads, who want to be totally hands-on and in, and there are dads who are like, I pass out when I even think about blood. So I just need to sit over here, and I need you to be the physically hands-on person. And that's okay too. So we talk about it a lot, and we figure out how we're going to work together to support mom however they want. And I just fit myself in where the gaps are.
What I keep hearing over and over and over again that I really love, and even though you haven't used this word specifically, the word that keeps coming to my mind is relationship.
Yes.
I love that you spend time building a relationship with your clients, with that family. You're there for them. You kind of key into what the needs are. You step in, you step out. And I love that you would even take the time to make a bed for dad. I mean, how awesome is that, right? And so is this only for the rich and famous? Because, there's nobody making my bed for me tonight. And I wouldn't mind that. But is doula services something that only the rich can afford? Or if, I'm a struggling mom, is there a way for me also to receive doula services?
Sure. So doula care can be expensive, I guess, depending on what your budget. There are doulas of all different kind of cost ranges. And at this point, actually the state of Indiana just accepted, they passed a law that Medicaid would cover doulas. Unfortunately, they didn't fund the account. So even though there's no money in it to pay the doula. So that's something that we're working on. We went to the state house, and we, pre-COVID, and tried to, kind of fight for doula rights. And there are some doctors and some great people kind of behind that, because they see the value in it, because there are so many moms that could utilize a doula, but they can't afford it. And so this would be a way for moms to be able to afford it. But there are also doulas who do a sliding scale. And in my case, this just happened. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I had an amazing client. I went to their house for their postpartum appointment, and he said, so what happens to moms who can't afford a doula? And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, you were so instrumental. Like I wouldn't have wanted to do it without you. He goes, and I just can't imagine anybody having to do it without you. So what if somebody can't afford it? Then what? And I said, well, it's funny that you say that. I said, I've been really interested in, maybe creating at some point, not quite yet, a nonprofit to help moms who, are in need and can't afford it. And I said, but for now, what I'm doing is I have an account, and then I'm taking donations, and people can kind of put money in it, and then I'll give it to moms who, in need and serve. Because obviously doula work is hard work. It's not, it's not easy. I mean, we're on our feet and working for, sometimes 60 hours at a time, and we're on call, and we have to get childcare. And so there's a lot to it. So to work for free would be not feasible. Right. And even though some of us want to, because we just love it so much, it's just not feasible, especially if you're the breadwinner in your family and that's how you make money. And so creating an account or a percentage of each of your fees to pay for a mom, that would be amazing. And so this client said, we want to give back. We want somebody to have a doula. And so he got with his family and they put money in this account, and I had a mom in need, and I was able to use that money to pay off her balance, because she was trying to pay me and she was doing her, but she needed some help. And so we paid off her balance, and she was just, it was so awesome. And so I would love to do that for as many moms as possible. And so starting this account it's just such a blessing. And again, I'd love at some point to do a nonprofit so that, as many moms as possible, could have help. But there are doulas, and you can look at different price ranges, that charge differing amounts, and they have differing services too. So it just really depends on what you want.
That's awesome. I love that there's somebody who's willing to give back and donate. And so I'm a firm believer, where there's a will, there's a way. And there are creative ways to do this. And one idea that we kind of pitched out on one of our webinars in this series is, instead of asking for toys and containers and different things that the baby really doesn't need, and we'll get into that here in just a moment, to ask for a gift certificate for doula services.
Yes.
And I love that. I thought that was a great, great, great idea.
It is. And I actually just started building gift certificates into my website the other day, along with the donations. So that'll be coming live soon, so that people can actually do that, because it's a great way. I've actually had moms pay for their daughters to have doulas, that have called me and said, I want to hire you, or I want my daughter to meet you, but then I would like to, hire you and pay you myself. And they did. So yeah, it's a great gift.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So this has been an awesome evening. You are just, like I said, just a great teacher. I love learning from you. I've gotten to know you over the past year. We commute a lot to our different Indie Birth Alliance meetings together, and I just love listening to you and learning from you. And once again, you did not disappoint us tonight. So thank you for being on this webinar. As we're beginning to wrap up this portion of the webinar, what is one golden nugget you would like for us to leave with today? If we missed the entire webinar and we only had 2 minutes, what should we grasp? What should we take away? What should we walk away with?
So this is going to sound super biased, but very true. If you're pregnant or thinking of becoming pregnant, look into hiring a doula. Having a good doula, it makes a difference for you and your partner. I don't know how many dads, say over and over, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was going to be like that, but thank you. Like, thank you for helping me even, thank you for helping her. Thank you for helping me. Evidence shows that a doula brings about a better overall birth experience, and anecdotal and personal experience tells me this is very true. You can look at all the, referrals on my website from dads, moms that tell me that it's true. And educating yourself, setting up a great birth team for yourself is the first step for a satisfying birth. So a lot of moms, you do everything that you can. You build yourself a good team, and then you rest in that, and you relax, and you let that team work for you while you bring your baby into the world.
That's wonderful. And there's nothing selfish about that.
No, it's an experience that and this is something I'm really passionate about it with it too, is like, this is somebody's experience forever. My grandmother, who just passed away at 97, could tell you about her births. Women remember that forever, and I want it to be good. You know, even if it doesn't go the way that we planned, I want it to be good. I want women to feel like they did a good job. You know, they made good choices. And sometimes we can't, you know, predict the outcomes. We can't control it, but we can control the attitudes around it. And so I think it's super important. So now we're going to take a break from talking about doulas and discuss something new I learned this past year. So I love learning new things. And over this past year from you, Jocelyn, we've, like you said, spent many, many hours in the car driving to and from meetings together. I've learned a lot about your, the infant developmental sequence. And as a doula, I get the opportunity to help moms prepare for their births. But once the babies are here, and the doulas are done, you know, what's next? How can moms set themselves up to prepare their babies for life? And so one way is accessing the infant, the access and education about the infant developmental sequence. And so I've learned it's important for babies to move. And like you kind of talked about, no containers, which is a pretty cool thing. The more I learn about what you do, the more I realize, oh my gosh, that totally makes sense. And I actually have a client that has no containers. And yeah, she lives in your neighborhood actually. And it's just, it amazes me, you know, kind of how they do things. And I've watched that because that's something I hadn't experienced before. And so it's really neat to see the process of that. So I know at this time, I'm going to turn the camera over to you, my friend and colleague, Jocelyn Williams. Jocelyn is the host of tonight's event, obviously, and she is a developmental movement consultant, the founder of Neurally Solutions Incorporated. Her passion is to educate mamas about the infant developmental sequence. Can't talk. Jocelyn can explain to us what the infant developmental sequence is and how our moms can help set their babies up for the best possible future. So Jocelyn, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome, thank you. But I'm going to give you a virtual handshake and a high five. You did an awesome job. Thank you for speaking to us about doula services tonight and kind of leading us through that birth process. And now baby is here. Baby is here with us. What do we do? What are some really important steps that we need to take to ensure that baby, we do our best to set baby up for the future? And so I'm going to take a moment to dive in and talk about the infant developmental sequence. And the way I'm going to do that is by sharing my screen with you. And so here we go. I'm going to share the screen. And can you see my full screen? Okay. Yes?
Yes, now.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, and are we still good?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So let's get going. So let me backtrack just a little bit. The name of the services I provide, I provide services through my business. It's called Neurally Solutions Incorporated, and we're also known as just simply Neurally. And what we do is we provide a movement-based educational approach to equipping the brain for life. And the work of Neurally is based on the infant developmental sequence. Every human infant was designed to go through a very simple process. And this process, in essence, and of course I can't guarantee anything, but in essence, this process equips the foundational levels of the brain. Now, this part of the brain is responsible for all of our automatic functions, such as bonding, emotional regulation, focus, sensory processing, and more. And so this simple process looks a little bit like this, okay? First we have the baby on their tummy, and then they're moving to tummy crawling, and then they begin hands and knees creeping, okay? This process of the developmental sequence for infants, I like to say, is as simple as A, B, and C. But what's very important to note is that this process needs to occur before the baby begins to walk. Now, I just need to kind of interject here. The infant developmental sequence has a couple of more components, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to focus on the movement portion. But in reality, there are three main parts. There's sensory integration, there's reflexive patterning, and there's movement. But we're going to focus in on the movement portion of the developmental sequence, okay? So let's begin with A. From birth, infants need to be on their tummies approximately 50% of a 24-hour period of time. We like to call this tummy all the time, okay? From there, tummy all the time leads into tummy crawling, which includes the belly button being flat on the ground and the baby moving forward. This form of locomotion is very similar to an army crawl, but not exactly. And here's just a tip. If a baby does not need mittens, they do not need socks. So when a baby is engaging in tummy crawling, all the baby needs is a comfortable onesie, a safe floor to crawl around on, and a comfortable temperature or climate in their environment, okay? At approximately 6 to 12 months, babies need an ample amount of time to creep on their hands and knees. So now notice the position of the baby. Baby is up on all fours and the belly button is no longer touching the ground. Baby should continue creeping until their creep has developed into an efficient cross-lateral movement. I have one client that I'm working with right now, love her to pieces. Mom says that she's got a peg leg, and it's true. She's doing her hands and knees creeping, but one leg she just keeps putting up, and it reminds us of a peg leg. And so we say, no, she's not completed her infant developmental sequence. And I've been giving moms some strategies, and the strategies are beginning to work, and baby's hands and knees creeping is becoming more efficient, okay? So if baby's butt scooting, if baby's got one leg up, one leg down, this is not an efficient hands and knees creep, and we need it to be efficient. Why? Because it's telling us a little bit about what's going on, well, more than a little bit. It's telling us a lot about what's going on in the central nervous system. And we want the central nervous system, we want the baby's brain to really be working well and efficiently. And the way that we know that that's happening is by watching their movement, okay? Now, when an infant engages in the developmental sequence, as I stated earlier, they are given equal access and opportunity to be equipped for life. Here are just some very quick basic examples. One, a baby who is bonded with their primary caretaker. Two, a child who is socially, emotionally equipped to have healthy peer interactions. Three, a student who's able to learn well. And four, an adult who has the strength needed to make a positive global impact. Now, I want to take you back to that first picture where you see baby bonding. A baby who's well bonded to their primary caretaker will more likely have success later on in life with bonding and having good social interactions, with learning and making that global impact. So what happens in infancy really affects the baby throughout their life. So the infant developmental sequence is very important. In summary, the infant developmental sequence for infants is as simple as A, B, and C. However, the impact is profound, and it's important to note that the developmental sequence needs to happen before the baby begins to walk. I also like to make note that the developmental sequence is not a man-made program. This isn't something that we created and we thought of. Researchers observed babies all over the world, and they found that they went through this developmental sequence, okay? This process, as we stated, is designed to equip the foundational levels of the brain for that child. So imagine this. If you build a house, are you going to build that house on rock, or are you going to build a house on sand? Well, of course, we're going to build the house on rock. The house needs to have a sturdy, strong foundation. So when the winds and the waves come, a storm comes, the house should stay firm and strong, right? That's wise. We are choosing wisdom. It's the same for our infants. If our infants are given the opportunity to go through their infant developmental sequence, we in essence are giving them a strong foundation to build the rest of their brain upon, okay? Who do we work with at Neurally? We work with infants, we work with children, we work with students, and even adults. Our process is super simple. The steps include the following: setting up a video or in-person assessment with our developmental movement consultant, okay? Then there's a training process. The developmental movement consultant will review the results of the educational assessment with the primary caretaker, and then we will provide training in the elements of the infant developmental sequence that that precious baby needs. And then the primary caretaker is going to be given a daily movement plan and support protocols to ensure that their precious baby has equal access and opportunity to complete the infant developmental sequence. For older children, students, and adults, we replicate the developmental sequence. And this pathway is called neurodevelopmental movement. Neurodevelopmental movement is based on neuroplasticity. When given the right triggers, the brain is able to change. In other words, there is hope. There is a second chance. So for more information about the infant developmental sequence or neurodevelopmental movement, please contact me, Jocelyn Williams. My phone number is 317-936-6797. You may also email me at jwilliams@nsibrain.com, or we can connect on social media at Neurally Solutions. So my golden nugget that I want to leave with you today is to please give your baby an opportunity to move. Just like we as adults, we need to move around. If we lay down in our beds all day long, our bodies will begin to atrophy, correct? Babies should not be in containers. They do not need to be in exercises and bouncy seats and swings all the time. There might be appropriate moments to use those things, but it should be very minimal because the babies need that movement. That movement affects and helps develop the lower levels of the brain. So please give your baby lots of movement, put them in a nice comfortable onesie, make sure they're on their tummies. And if they're not wanting to be on their tummy, then give us a call, reach out to us, and let's find out why. Okay, so thank you for taking a moment to listen to this part of the presentation on the infant developmental sequence. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and jump back over to you. All right. Here we are. So tonight we have been talking about doula services. Our guest speaker was Carly Melentine. Then we moved on to talk a little bit about the infant developmental sequence. And we're going to begin to land the plane here. And what we want to do is invite you back next week. And in fact, next week, we are going to dive in to the infant developmental sequence in more detail, okay? And so we invite you to come back and join us next week for the next portion, to hear more about the infant developmental sequence, to ask questions about it. I will be your host next week, and I will be the presenter next week. And then after that, we're going to have one last webinar in our series. So it's not too late. If you haven't signed up, to sign up tonight. If you're with us tonight, we'll put the link in the chat box. And if you're watching this via recording, we just encourage you to log on to Eventbrite and just type in Indie Birth Alliance Education Series, and our information will pop up. You can also find us on Facebook at Indie Birth Alliance Community. And we welcome you to join our Facebook page and to learn more about this very important community-based organization. This organization, the Indie Birth Alliance, we even heard it tonight through Carly, is a group of birth professionals empowering a healthy birth community to support, service, education, and advocacy. And I love, Carly, that you and other birth workers went to the State House to advocate for doula services for all mamas. That is awesome. And that's just one simple example of the work that we do. So before we leave, Carly, do you want to jump in and say any last comments? You're on mute.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute from when you were talking. I turned myself off. No, I think we covered it, unless you have any other questions.
No, I'm excited. I really enjoyed speaking with you tonight, and I'm looking forward to next week's webinar. And so for all of you who were able to join us, have a great night. And for those of you who are watching via recording, again, our guest speaker was Carly Melentine. And Carly, I do think it's important for you to tell us how to contact you.
Oh, well, that is probably important. So my website is willowtreedoula.com. You can find me on Instagram, also on Facebook, and
that's awesome. Willow Tree Services.
Willow Tree Doula Services.
Willow Tree Doula Services, and we can find you online, your website, Facebook, and Instagram.
Also email willowtreedoulaservices@gmail.com, but that's also on my website if anybody's looking.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. Have a great night, and we appreciate everyone joining us. Take care, and we'll see you next week.